Prince Harry was never the kind to merely act the part and sit back. There was always something unique about him, even as a child, a spark that didn't quite fit into the rigid framework of royal expectations. He was the prince who wore outrageous costumes, laughed too loudly, and walked numbly behind his mother's coffin. He was raised with the constant reminder from the public that he was more than simply a boy. He was Diana's boy. In the present day, the man who earlier distanced himself from the palace is now the one subtly stating something that no one anticipated hearing again. With defiance in his eyes, "I'm returning home. Just at home, not for a show or a Netflix commercial, and not to wave from a balcony," because even the most disobedient souls occasionally yearn for a simple peace once everything has settled. It was electrifying when Harry and Meghan Markle first met. She was outspoken, independent, and completely outside the royal bubble, in addition to being gorgeous. She represented freedom to him. He appeared to her like a fairy tale headline in human form. Their romance had the chemistry of a Hollywood film. Millions of people watched a prince and actress wedding. It was meant to be the start of something innovative, but fairy tales are irrelevant in the real world. They were inseparable at first. With the zeal of two individuals who thought they could change everything, they were smiling and taking up causes and projects while facing the world via storms. For a while, perhaps they could, but as the pressure increased, as the cameras continued to flash, and the focus increased. After growing up in castles, Harry unexpectedly found himself in rooms full of publicists and producers. Pitch meetings and paparazzi took the place of royal responsibilities. Cadence. He exchanged his military gear for microphones for podcasts. And amid all that cacophony, something began to change. In his stomach. Not in the news, he began to miss things he had never anticipated. The barracks' early mornings, the uncomfortable formalities of royal gatherings, the languid strolls across the palace garden with his father, and the awkward silences with his brother. It was oppressive at first, but now it felt stable. It was neither the fame or the aftermath that struck hardest. Meghan had thrived because she saw that his sacrifices weren't fairly shared. Her reputation, independence, and command over their narrative had all increased. But Harry felt more alone than ever while he observed her success in Hollywood. He couldn't help but wonder whether he had been on a ride that wasn't truly intended. For two people, those near him began to hear it in his voice. Not hate or rage, but a silent, agonizing clarity, the kind that appears as the crowd disperses and the lights go down. He didn't regret falling in love with Meghan. He didn't even feel bad about leaving the castle. But he was beginning to realize how much he had confused loyalty with love. He is no longer discussing news conferences or royal travel. He talks of having dinners with his brother, helping his father deal with his illness, and re-establishing the quiet and letting go of the commotion. He is attempting to recover whatever remains in the wreckage, not to reverse the past. Meghan is no longer the exclusive focus. It's now about Harry, the man who sacrificed everything for love and is now at a crossroads, trying to figure out what's left of him. Lately, he's been spending more time by himself, not in a lonely way, but in a contemplative way. The type where you look at your phone when it rings, remembering who you were before things become complicated. The sort where you wake up in the middle of the night and question whether you made the proper decisions in terms of identity and love. According to insiders, he has been avoiding staged appearances and business deals, focusing more on reality. And less on the polished picture. He no longer seeks attention from the media. His goal is to discover what the devil happened to the youngster who used to laugh till dawn with his sibling. He now has a weight on him that isn't visible on camera. The more distance he put between himself and the crown, the more he understood that part of that weight was truly a part of who he was. This weight comes from witnessing everything you once stood for: duty, tradition, family, and so on turn into something you had to flee. Although he no longer speaks about his mother in interviews, close friends claim that Diana's voice has taken on a sort of compass for him. What would she say? How would she respond? Harry appears to think she wouldn't have wanted him to feel so isolated, not only from the royal family but also from himself, even if no one can say for sure. The tension with Meghan has been increasing. She didn't sign up for this version of Harry, the one who is publicly missing the very institution she worked so hard to leave and pining for his past, as there is a silent struggle going on behind the smiles and photo ops. Clean. Start a new story, however. He is looking back rather than forward, which is incompatible with her strategy. It goes beyond mere conjecture. Arguments have become more regular according to people close to the marriage. Cold, calculated, but not explosive. She views his wish to go back as a step backward. He believes it to be therapeutic, and neither of them is prepared to change. She continues to pursue influence. When questioned regarding upcoming initiatives, he no longer provides the polished responses. He shrugs occasionally and doesn't respond at all. He doesn't make big claims. Although he isn't making any public remarks, his behavior is beginning to provide a completely different impression. They claim that when he speaks to them more, he appears lighter. Gates once again and genuinely return home has moved him deeply. There is no royal formality involved, just a father and son attempting to heal a rift that their link was shattered, not simply broken, and nobody knows how to mend it. Harry continues to veer toward his former life, but not because he aspires to be a royal. Once more, titles don't matter to him. Even though he must face it alone, he longs for something far more human: forgiveness, belonging, and a place that seems like his own again. He stood at the edge of the estate grounds, hands in his pockets, gazing at the gravel road as if it held all the answers. It was recognizable. Too much like home, he was impacted harder than he anticipated by every wall, tree, and silent shadow of his early years. But this time, there were no cameras or royal guards following. He was Harry alone. According to his own terms, he wasn't here to request authorization, and he wasn't entirely sure what he wanted. All he knew was that in order to recall who he was before life turned into a chessboard with implications for every move, he needed to be here to feel it again. Perhaps it was only the solitude, but the air was colder than he remembered. This location, which used to be busy and noisy, now seemed like a waiting area, awaiting something more significant. As he approached the ancient stables, his footsteps reverberated, those that he and William used to sneak away to smoke, joke, and quarrel. Harry hadn't stopped thinking about him, even though they hadn't spoken in months. Not since that last icy confrontation where every word was piercing and every look was a wall. He wasn't anticipating a nice welcome, and he wasn't particularly grieving because, behind the wounds of public betrayal and private tension, his brother was still the only one who understood what it was like to grow up in that bizarre, claustrophobic society. Anticipating a discussion, however, it wasn't about demonstrating who was correct. It was about halting the bleeding. Meghan, meanwhile, remained silent and had not joined him. Her face didn't fall when he told her he was leaving, but instead stiffened like a door closing softly. She didn't scream or protest, but in that instant they both were aware that something had changed. Her world continued to move forward with calls to close deals, schedule appearances, and Harry was being pulled backward by his He had attempted to hold both lives in his hands, but, in reality, they no longer fit. The questions that were being whispered behind the scenes were no longer murmurs. Would she go with him? Already altered were two persons silently entering different scripts instead of continuing on this voyage together. There were only moments and no answers yet. A man standing on a well-traveled path and pondering what it would take to be forgiven is an example of this. Not by the general public or even the monarchy, but by those who once knew him the best. He only wanted his name back, his laugh back, and the tranquility that comes from being among people who didn't want to reclaim a title or seek praise. Meghan stayed or left. Whether the royals opened the door or closed it, he had finished acting for the play. He chose roots, even if they were knotted, and honesty, even if it required suffering. Most importantly, he decided to give up running, because, in the end, all he needed was a place to call home, not a crown.